People talk about parallel universes and other worlds as if they're hidden from us. I look around and see parallel worlds all around me. A simple walk through the city lets me travel through 3 or 4 worlds on my way across town. There's so much out there to discover. It fills me with hope and imagination. I don't have to travel to the outer rim of the universe to discover something completely new to me. All around me is the possibility of something new, something that can turn my whole life upside down and open it up. I've always seen my dreams as another world, one that I get to visit every night. I'm not sure how other people dream, but I've always had the most vivid and interactive dreams. It became an issue for me when I was younger and had constant nightmares. It felt so real to me that going to sleep would fill me with dread. I was terrified of being thrust into a nightmare and having no way out. Dream time can last forever, and I couldn't handle the possibility that I might be trapped in a nightmare for what would feel like an eternity. As I got older and I gave myself over to the unknown, I was finally able to enjoy and experience my dreams, nightmare or not. At different times in my life, I'll have recurring dreams that seem to be sending me a message. They continue almost night after night until I eventually spend my days trying to decipher them. One of these dreams was all about flying. Not flying in a plane, but me. Flying like a superhero all around the world. I wouldn't save anyone, I wouldn't be heading to any specific destination. The dream was all about the sensation of freedom of flying, all high above the world, high above everyone and everything. There was never anyone else in my dreams, just me traveling the world, dropping in on cities and across glorious natural landscapes, reveling in the sense of lightness and beauty around me. I loved having that dream over and over. It pained me to wake up. Numerous times as I felt myself slipping back to reality, I would try and fight and hold on to the dream, unwilling to come back and feel the heaviness of the real world. I would spend my days reliving the dream, trying to catch a semblance of how I felt during the night. Years after I had stopped having the flying dream, my girlfriend at the time invited me to go with her to participate in a guided meditation with singing bowls. She was a hippie and always into New Age fads and whatever was going on at the moment. I wasn't against anything New Age, but I wasn't really into it either. I had an ambivalent attitude towards spirituality in general at the time. I wasn't even sure what singing bowls were or what they had to do with meditation, but I agreed to go with her because she was my girlfriend and I loved her. The teacher of the class had us lay on the floor as they burnt incense and then rubbed a series of crystal bowls, filling the room with this cacophony of reverberating tones. I could feel the bowls' songs ringing through my body, and the more I tried to meditate, the louder the songs became. At a certain point, the noise almost became painful. My head and ears began to vibrate. I must have fallen asleep though, because the last thing I remember was wincing and trying my best not to cover my ears. A feeling of joy washed over me as I found myself back in the skies, traversing the world light as a feather. This flying dream was different than the one I had earlier in my life. I wasn't in control of where I was flying this time. This time I was being guided, taken to a cliffside where I landed. I remembered the howling winds off the cliff almost lifting me back into the sky as I walked forward onto the cliffside. There was a group of people gathering on the cliff, but they all had their backs facing to me. They didn't seem to know I was there. I walked closer to the crowd. All the people were dressed well, in formal summer attire, and they were chatting and laughing as I approached them. I was close enough to reach out and touch one of them when I was blown up high into the sky by an incredible gust of wind. I flew higher and higher up into the clouds, into the atmosphere, before suddenly waking up with a jolt back in the room surrounded by the song of those crystal bowls. The meditation session ended shortly after I awoke, but the feeling of the dream I had stuck with me long after we left and made it home. Months later, though, the same girlfriend made me accompany her to a wedding. I didn't want to go, as it was going to be outside during the hottest part of the summer, and I wasn't looking forward to roasting in the sun while I faked interest in a bunch of strangers' lives. Despite my hyper-negative outlook on the situation, I went with her to the wedding. I did try to get out of it at the last moment, but she brought down the hammer and forced me to attend. When we arrived at the venue, I was immediately struck with the most intense feeling of déjà vu. The wedding was being held on a cliffside, not just any cliff, but the same one I had seen in my dream. I looked around the area, searching for more synchronicities to my dream. Everywhere I looked, it felt familiar. My mind was flashing between my dreams and my reality. Images scrolled behind my eyes so quickly that I couldn't tell if I was creating my reality or creating my memories. All the guests were gathering for pre-wedding drinks and socializing, but my mind was elsewhere. I took the first pause in conversation as an opportunity to look around some more. The similarities between my dream and where I stood at the moment were uncanny. It was all too much for me to ignore and wash away with an open bar. Farther away from the crowd was a small bench over towards the edge of the cliff, looking out onto the ocean. I started to make my way over to the bench when I heard my girlfriend's voice call out to me. "Where are you going?" "I wanted to look at the ocean," I responded. "Okay, be careful, babe, it's really windy." She came closer to me and gave me a quick kiss before returning to the crowd. I walked out to the bench, gazing out over the water. Looking back at the crowd, none of them seemed to notice that I had separated from them, leaving me truly able to dive into that feeling of déjà vu that had taken over. The wind was gusting every minute or so. It was strong like in my dream, but I wasn't the light feathery person I was in my dream, and although the wind was annoying and totally messing up my hair, it was most likely not going to blow me up into the atmosphere. I made my way over to the edge, to the wooden guardrail, so I peered down onto the ocean. When I looked down, I was greeted with a shock. About halfway down the cliff was a person, a woman with long blonde hair just standing on the smallest outcrop of rocks. She was still like a statue, and the wind seemed to have no effect on her. The more I looked at her, the more I thought I was imagining it. She didn't even seem to actually be standing on the rocks. She was floating. She was flying. I just stared at her for a minute or so before she abruptly looked up at me. Our eyes locked into one another's. I was still in a state of disbelief. My mind was unable to accept that she was real. She smiled at me and gracefully slipped off the cliffside, floating there so delicately as the winds blew around her. She floated away from the rocks before flipping around and flying off over the ocean and off into the sunset. I watched her disappear. I looked back at the crowd, and they were all still wrapped up in their conversations, while I alone was having a moment that would change everything for me. I knew that I was in between two worlds, being offered the choice between returning back to ignorance, ignoring what had just happened, or leaning out towards the unknown and accepting that I more than likely know nothing of the world. I looked back and forth between the crowd and the cliff, debating what to do next. I could never go back to my old world. I found a new one, a world without limits, and even if I tried to return to my old life and my old ways, my soul had changed. My mind could never go back. There was only one way left for me. At that point, I knew it was onward and upward. I felt chosen, special, and alive. And to think, I originally didn't want to go to the wedding.